Prashant, it is 10:40. I think only we have about 15 participants. Shall we start off?
We should, Guru. I'm sure people will join in. People will join in. So I think let's get started. Yes.
So you can mute everybody. I'll start with screen share.
I will do that now.
Good morning, everybody. I welcome you all for today's virtual meeting. Today's topic is Kailasa Temple of Ellora. This Kailasa Temple is a wonder. It's a marvelous feature of Indian architecture. Many of you would have gone there, seen, admired this beautiful Kailasa Temple. Some of you would have heard about it and seen the pictures of this great Kailasa Temple. I would say this is one such wonderful, great heritage of our country that every Indian should feel proud of and should visit at least once in his lifetime to see how beautifully we have created a marvel thousands of years back. With this small note, I welcome you all to this lecture on the temple of Kailasa, which is situated at Ellora. We'll see about the temple, how its construction was started, and how they did this construction and all the details. And then we'll go on a virtual tour to see this beautiful Kailasa temple. With this note, let's enter into this Kailasa lecture. Kailasa, or Kailasnatha temple as it is called, is the largest of the rock-cut temples in this world. Look, and this particular temple is located in Ellora in Maharashtra, and this is known as cave number 16 of the Ellora. It's one of the largest rock-cut temples that you see in this world. It's a mega monolithic carved out of a single live rock, a cliff facing in a cliff. It is considered as the most remarkable cave among the cave temples of Ellora in this world because of its size, architecture, and sculptural treatment. The top of the stupa structure is almost 107 feet above the ground level, and the rock is facing slope downwards from the rear of the temple to the front. So that entire face of the rock which is sloping down is being scooped out, and this temple is being created as a single piece of monolithic structure. Archaeologists believe that it is scooped out of a single ripe log, and there is absolutely no dispute about this aspect, that whether it was a structural temple or so, and some parts of it is structural or anything. It is totally been proved that this is a single monolithic temple in this world. Kailasa is the largest among the excavations that you have Buddhist, Jain, or Hindu temples that you see in this area of Ellora. This is the largest such excavation that you see there in Ellora. The the temple is started by Rashtrakuta King Krishna somewhere around 756 to 773 CE. And it was completed over a period of 200 years by different kings of Rashtrakutas who ruled this region. The temple is a temple architecture has very close resemblance to the Pallava architecture and the Chalukya temple. So both these Kailasnatha temples at Kanchipuram and the Virupaksha temple of Pattadakkal have got a very close resemblance to this Kailasa temple. Now, when you see this Kailasa temple, which is situated in the north of India, where you find temple architecture in a different style, that is Nagara style and so on. And Maharashtra has also got a typically a peculiar style of building temples also. So it's also a part of Nagara, but this one particular temple of Kailasa is totally in Dravidian architectural style, which has got the close resemblance to the two temples of Kanchipuram Kailasnatha and the Virupaksha temple at Pattadakkal. Kailasa temple lacks any dedicated inscription to its builder, but there's no doubt that it belongs to the Rashtrakuta time of architecture. It's very clearly evidenced by the style and execution that it was commissioned by the Rashtrakuta kings. The construction is generally attributed to Rashtrakuta Krishna I, and based on the two epigraphs that link this temple with Krishna Raja. Of course, this does not have any own inscription of its own, but some other inscription, some other temple refer that this temple of Kailasa was built by Krishna I, somewhere around 756 and 773. The temple contains a number of bas-relief and freestanding sculptures, which are on a very, very grand scale. And you can also see some fragments of Esterier's paintings, which was done centuries old, also being seen faintly there and here in this temple. Now, this is the view of the Kailasa temple. This is an internet image which I have taken here. Look at that. This is the entire live hill which slopes down. And on that slope, they've excavated the entire live rock and created this temple. None of these structures are made outside and brought and assembled here. This is absolutely not a structural temple, but it's totally a rock cut excavation, which is called a monolithic rock cut excavation. The entire temple is carved out of the live rock. You can see the live cliff of the rock slope here very clearly, and this entire temple, which is so huge, was just carved out of this live rock. Look at this one portion of this. Again, another view of this temple. You have the temple, the Mahamandapam, and all those features exactly that of a Dravidian architectural temple, very, very beautifully excavated as a monolithic structure from the live rock. This is again a beauty of this. Kailasa, from another view of this Kailasa, the main temple of Kailasa, right on the top of the Mahamandapam, you have beautiful images of valleys and shimas, very beautifully done. Normally, this sort of architecture cannot be done in a structural temple or anything, but this is the beauty of Kailasa that you see here. Again, another view of Kailasa, how the cliff comes down and the entire temple is being scooped out of this live rock here. So now you get a clear image of how Kailasa was scooped out of a single piece of rock. Dr. Davlekar points out the architectural evidence suggests that the entire temple was planned very much at the beginning. The entire layout of the temple, everything was planned right from the day one. And the main shrine is very similar to that of Virupaksha temple at Pattadakal, which is again a replica of the Kailasa temple at Kanchipura. According to the Virupaksha temple inscriptions, the Chalukyas brought the Pallava artists from Pattadakal, artists to Pattadakal after defeating them. Later, the Chalukyas were defeated by the Rashtrakutas, and these Rashtrakuta kings must have been impressed by the beautiful Virupaksha temple. As a result of it, the sculptor and the artisans and the architects, all of the Pallava origin and that of Pattadakal, were brought in for the construction of this beautiful edifice of Kailasa at Ellora. So it's very clear that this is a temple which is a replica of the Kailasnatha temple. The Kailasa temple features are multiple architectural styles are seen there. This is combined with relatively large size and has some scholars believe that this construction should have been spanned over a long period of 100 or 200 years, which has been done by the Rashtrakuta kings. The Kailasa temple began during the time of Danti Durga, who was the first of the Rashtrakuta kings. And later this internal feud, Danti Durga was assassinated and Krishna became the king. And he started to build this Kailasa temple. And the first completed version of the Kailasa temple was during the time of Krishna I. And it was much, much smaller in size than what you see in the present day. Probably the central shrine, the Garbhagraha and the Mantaba were the contribution of Krishna I. And later on, the additions were made by the different Rashtrakuta kings into this wonderful Kailasa edifice. Later, Rashtrakutas extended this temple. The rulers like Dhruva, Dhanavarsha, Govinda III, Amoghavarsha, Krishna III, everybody of the Rashtrakuta kings have contributed to the expansion of this wonderful Kailasa temple, which was started by Krishna I. Yes? The Paramara rulers, Bhoja king, who built the beautiful edifice of the temple, Shiva temple at Bhojpur, he had defeated Rashtrakutas in the 10th century. And he came to this place and of Ellora. He had also commissioned two elephants, huge elephants on the lower plinth of this temple. And he also added later layer of paintings to the roof walls of this beautiful temple of Kailasa. Finally, the great queen Ahalyabai Holkar, who renovated many of the beautiful Shiva temples, the Jyotirlinga temples all over this country and other places, and many other temples, also renovated this temple, which was under worship, and she painted the many portions of this temple. Unfortunately, today, the entire Kailasa temple is not under worship. It's only declared as a monument. And most of the temple is being vandalized very badly, and all the sculptures, wonderful sculptures of this temple are being vandalized by the Islamic invasions that have taken place in this region. And today, this is only a monument that could be visited and not a temple under worship. The most important sculpture that you see in this temple is that Ravana lifting and shaking up the Kailasa. And this particular sculpture was a later addition to the main structure. And probably because of this sculpture, which was so wonderful, this temple got the name as Kailasa temple. The sculpture of this is considered as one of the finest pieces of Indian art, and it is possible that this temple came to be known as Kailasa after that, as I said earlier. Historians attribute some of the structures of this temple complex to the later rulers. They include the Lankeshwar cave, that is what we saw, the Kailasa cave, and the river goddess of Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, and the temples dedicated for the Saptamatrikas were all included later. And major inclusion of this Kailasa temple and the expansion of this Kailasa temple happened during the Govinda III's time. This Kailasa temple is noted for its vertical excavation. The sculptors started this temple construction from the top and they came downwards, building one by one, step by step. From the top, they excavated the entire temple. The traditional methods were used by master artisans. And they had a lovely plan as to how to execute this beautiful temple. Everything must have been in drawings and everything must have been clearly marked and demarcated very clearly. And that's how the excavation of this entire Kailasa had been done, starting from the top. May I request you all to kindly mute yourself, please? A legend refers to this Kailasa temple, which is totally different from the historical facts. This is a story which goes around this area. There was a king of this area who suffered a severe disease, and his queen prayed to Krishneshwar, the Jyotirlinga Kshetra at Ellora, to cure her husband. This Krishneshwar Jyotirlinga Mahakshetra is right in front of the Kailasa temple, just hardly about a kilometer away from this Kailasa temple. So she prayed to this Krishneshwar Jyotirlingam to cure her husband. So her husband was also cured. She vowed to construct a temple if her wish was granted and promised that she will observe fast until she sees the shikara of the new temple that she builds up. The king was cured by God's grace. She requested all the artisans to build a temple immediately. But many of the artists declared that they cannot do, and it will take months and years to build a temple and place the shikara on top of it. So the queen was shocked and she was terrified as to how she could survive for years together without eating anything. But she has made a vow. She wanted that vow to be fulfilled. There was one architect named Kokasa. He assured the king and the queen that he would be able to see the shikara of the temple within a week's time. And he started the building of the temple from the top by carving a rock. And he was able to finish the shikara within a week's time. And thereby the queen gave up her fast. So this is a story, a folklore story, which is going around that place of Ellora, as how this Ellora temple had come into existence. The temple was named as Manikeshwara after the queen's name Manikama. Kokasa was indeed the chief architect who built this wonderful edifice of Kailasa. And there are many inscriptions of 11th and 13th century in central India, which is found. Those temples were constructed by the architects who were born in the illustrious family of Kokasa. So thereby we come to know we don't have any inscriptional evidence of Kailasa as to who built it and all that. But there are multiple inscriptions which say that this temple was built by Rashtrakutas and Kokasa was we could infer that Kokosara was the architect who built this, and that illustrious family of Kokosara had contributed in this region with many other beautiful edifices. Kailasa temple's architecture is different from earlier style that was prevalent in the Deccan region, which I said earlier. It's based on the Virupaksha temple of Pattadakal and Kailasanath temple of Kanchi. But one thing we should remember is that it's not built exactly as a replica of all these things or an exact imitation of these things. Indigenous Deccan artists also worked on that, giving their beauty and style in these wonderful sculptural representations. And these Deccan artists always play a subordinate role to the main architects of the Pallava and the Chalukyan region. So the influence of Pallava and Chalukyan region is seen predominantly in this beautiful temple of Kailasa. That's beautiful Kailasa temple. Now we see the ground plan of it. This is the ground plan of the Kailasa temple, where you have the main temple here. This is the Garbhagraham. This is the Mahamantapam. And you have 5 other temples, Upalayas. And you have 2 beautiful balconies extended there. And as you come out of the Mahamantapam, you have a Nandi Mantapam. And this is all in an elevated height than the ground. The base of that is beautifully shown in a very architectural fashion. You have the main entrance to the temple here, and this is the prakara, which is scooped out of the live rock, which is beautifully scooped out, almost about 30 feet from the rock. It has been scooped out, and a beautiful Pradakshina Mantapa has been made. And there you have wonderful sculptures on the rear wall and all the other walls also. And in additional temples were included here, which is dedicated to the river goddesses. You have another temple for the Saptamatrikas and so on. So beautifully it was created, and this is the ground plan of the great Kailasa temple that you see here. Now we are going to enter to this Kailasa temple on a virtual tour. Now I'll be walking you through the entire temple to see the architectural marvel of this. This is the main entrance of the Kailasa temple. The doorway is very small. You see, this is the doorway that goes into the Kailasa temple, which is in 2 layers. And you have a balcony here also. And there are sculptures which you see here. And as you go in close to this, you'll find that one side of this sculptures are dedicated to Shiva. You have different murtis of Shiva on the face of this. And on the other side, you have different murtis of Vishnu representing here. Here you have Trivikramaltaram and you have the Narsimha here. All these sculptures are badly damaged that you could hardly recognize them. And one side you have the beautiful Shiva and one side you have the beautiful Vishnu images. Apart from that, you have the Ashtadik Balakas, 4 on each side, riding on their Vahanas. You can see the Ashtadik Balakas, who are the guardians of the 8 cardinal directions, are being represented in the sculptural form, and they are seen 4 on either side here. Then you have the 2 river goddess, Ganga and Yamuna. Ganga on her Vahana, the Makara, and Yamuna on her Vahana, the tortoise. Both of them are there. They are the guardians. In all our Hindu temples, the guardians of the temple are the 2 river goddess. So here you have the 2 river goddess, Ganga and Yamuna, being represented on either side of the entrance, and then you enter this temple, walking through this gateway. As you walk through this gateway, on either side you have the beautiful demon images of the Shankanidhi Hello. Hello, am I audible? Sorry.
Yeah.
There was a sudden interruption in the supply. So I'll just go on. Okay?
All good, Guru. We can hear you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is the entrance which is guarded by the two demons, Shankaridhi and Padmanidhi. So these are the. Am I clear?
Guru, are you sharing your screen, Guru? I don't think we can see your screen.
1 minute. Sorry. Something has happened. Hello?
Yes, Guru, we are here.
I'm not able to get the screen share.
Screen sharing is enabled. You should be
I'm
able
sorry,
to.
I'm not able to see that. I'm sorry, should I get back and come?
Do you want me to disable and enable screen sharing once again? Let me do that.
No, I'll have to rejoin, I think it looks like.
All right, we'll wait for you, no problem.
1 minute. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, your screen is visible, Guru. Now you just need to share the PowerPoint.
Screen share. But screen share doesn't seem to be appear.
No, your screen share is shared. You just need to share the open the PowerPoint now. Can you just open the PowerPoint and put it on full screen? It should be good. Yeah, perfect. You can now put it in full screen and
put it in full screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Start. Yes.
Sorry for the confusions. Okay. As you enter this beautiful temple, you have the two beautiful Shankaridhi and Padmanidhi, which are the guardians of the Kubera as well, welcoming you inside the temple. Now, when we pass through this entrance, on either side, you have a beautiful sculpture of, on the one side, you have the sculpture of Mahishasura Mardini, Devi Durga slaying the demon Mahishasura. She is known for her valor and courage. So, what would we go into the temple to get certain things to us? We need a betterment in our life, so we go to the temple, pray for this thing. We need power, we need courage, we need all the mighty strength. So we pray to Durga. And then opposite to Durga is the Ganapati. who's Tipati of Buddhi. So after getting all the power, we also pray for a good intellectual mind to Ganapati. And then we pray to these two gods. And then as we enter, we see the beautiful image of Mahalakshmi being seated there. She is the goddess of wealth. And that's the colossal sculpture of Mahalakshmi that you see there. She's seated on a beautiful Shira Sagara with lotus everywhere. It's a total lotus pond. And she sits in the central lotus, which is so huge. And she's the goddess of wealth. And you have the elephants on all the sides pouring water on her. They're doing the abhisheka for her. The abhisheka which is being done is a continuous process of praying to her by the elephants. That's seen here. One elephant is lifting the water pot and giving it to the other one, and the other one is pouring around it. When this side it completes, it goes on to the other side. So like that, the continuous abhisheka for Lakshmi Devi is happening there, and she is seated beautifully on the lotus pond there. You can see that very beautiful sculpture of Mahalakshmi seated on the lotus here. And the elephants pouring the water as abhisheka to her. And this is a lotus pond. This is beautifully represented here as the lotus leaves, with all the lotus leaves covering the entire pond. And this one beautiful lotus emerging out on which Devi Lakshmi is seated. And she is guarded by the two gigantic Dwarapalakas on either side, as you see there. Now, when you enter to the right side, you have this beautiful image of Tripurantaka, Shiva. Shiva wanted to destroy the three demons, so he came in the chariot. The chariot was pulled by the four Vedas representing the four horses there. And Brahma was the charioteer. The three asuras had taken a vow that they should be killed with one single arrow when they are in together in single line, and which happens once in a millions of years. So Shiva took the form of Triprantaka, was seated on the chariot, and he was driving, Brahma was driving the chariot. The chariot was coming in a very high speed. Suddenly Shiva spots all the three asuras in one line, and the chariot was about to turn, and there he shoots the arrow. This is not exactly in the story, but this is the imagination the sculptor has given it beautifully. Look at the force with which the Shiva's chariot is turning onto that. Look at the way, how beautifully the space is utilized to give that effect of Shiva's chariot turning, and Shiva seeing and aiming at the three asuras there. Amazing architectural wonder that they have created there. And look at this. There are many other forms of Shiva on one side. Apart from that, you have Rati and Manmada, the gods of love, are seen here as couple. And you have different forms of Shiva and Parvati also. And not only Shiva Parvati representations, there are many other Vishnu representations also seen here. This is how the four walls of the two sides of this beautiful hall in which the Mahalakshmi statue is there has been decorated very beautifully. On the other side, you have Govardhana Giridhari, Krishna lifting the Govardhana mountain. You have Mahishasura Mardini, again, a very beautiful representation of Mahishasura Mardini. So these sculptures are adding beauty to the main hall through which we enter into this great Kailasa temple. So as we come out of this beautiful temple, admiring at these wonderful sculptures, we enter into the prakara of the temple. The first thing that we see in the prakara is the huge colossal elephants, which was again created by the Boja kings. These beautiful elephants are exactly life size of an elephant, and today it's totally mutilated, but it is Amazing sculpture that was scooped out of the entire living ground. And this elephant is very, very real. Absolutely so beautiful. You can see the elephant and admire in different way. And you have the Vijaya Stamba, the Garuda Stamba or Vijaya Stamba or whatever you call it, two pillars of victory on either side of this. And then either side of the temple, you have these two Vijaya Stambas there. We call it Gaja Stamba, Vijaya Stamba, Garuda Stamba, whatever you call that. These beautiful two stambas. These were all the later additions added to this entire Kailasa edifice. Now, when we come out of the Pragara after seeing admiring the beautiful elephant sculpture, you see a beautiful cave temple dedicated to the three river goddesses, Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. The three goddesses are seen there as bas relief from the rear wall of this cave. Look at the beautiful way the sculptural representations of Ganga has been done. She's seated, she's standing on the Makara Vahana. Look at the slender way in which the Ganga has been depicted. Look at the floral designs that represent that Ganga and the Torana, the Makara Torana, in which the Ganga is standing. Amazingly beautiful architectural style. This is Yamuna. The Yamuna is seen on a tortoise now, on top of a tortoise. Look at that beautiful Yamuna. Look at the floral designs that is seen around her. Yamuna is dark, Ganga is white. That's what they say. Ganga and Yamuna are two contrasting colors of water. And this is Saraswati, the mythical river Saraswati, which once existed now. This today is Antarvahini. Look at that beautiful way in which Saraswati is. Look at the slender way in which these entire images are beautiful, chiseled out. Look at the costumes, the drapery, the floral designs, the crown, the Makara Toranas, everything. It's amazing work of art that you could see in the three representations of these three river goddesses. As you come out of the temple, you enter and see the prakara, walking corridor around the temple. And along with the corridor, you have the closed prakara also, which is in two levels, which has been totally excavated from the live rock. These pillars and the prakara, and that contains many halls meant for lectures or something like that, parayanas and things like that. They all have been excavated from the live rock, which were done later addition in this. The base of this entire prakara walls are beautifully decorated with lovely images of different forms of gods and goddesses. And look at the way how they've excavated from the live rock. Entire thing is scooped out inside. And the entire rock cliff, almost extending up to almost 15 to 20 feet, is used as a cantilever for this entire prakara. Many of the places it is so huge, the cantilever is almost 30 feet wide. So how 30 feet leaving the rock, they have gone inside and excavated this beautiful prakara. And this prakara runs on all the three sides of this wonderful temple. And as you see the prakara, on the other side of the wall of the main temple, you have a beautiful miniature representation of Mahabharata. The Mahabharata scenes are beautifully represented in a miniature form, and that's what you see here. The Arjuna doing the tapas here, and here Shiva and Arjuna fighting as for the Kirata Arjunium is represented here. And so many scenes from Mahabharata are shown here. Look at this. You can see the scene where Abhimanyu is fighting with the Chakra when he's got caught into the Chakra Vyuham. And you have many other sculptures. Look at this. Drishtadyumna beheading Dronacharya. When he hears Ashwatthama is dead, he comes down and sits in meditation, and Drishtadyumna cuts his head. And that's beautifully shown in the sculpture. The Mahabharata sculptures are beautifully seen on this side of this face of this temple, and the entire walls of outside the main temple, are beautifully decorated with elaborate sculptures and outstanding quality. The designs are so intricate and so beautiful. It's mesmerizing to see this wonderful creation. You have Shivanatraja doing the Sandhya Tandava. Mind you, all these things were painted. You have Mahavishnu on top of his Vahana, the Garuda. You have Kailasa Maharamurti, Shiva coming out of the lingam and kicking on Yamadharma. You have Andakasura Samharamurti, Shiva killing Andakasura. And this is the beautiful corridor, the Prakara, covered Prakara inside, scooped out of the life that see here. And in that you have many sculptural representations. You have the Dasagriva Ravana, who was praying to Shiva. He cut one by one and left all his heads as an offering to Shiva. That's what is seen here. The 9 heads of Ravana are seen here. And the final head, he wants to sacrifice, that Shiva appeared before him. And he gave his Atmalinga. So that is shown here. The 9 heads are seen here of Ravana. And you have Shiva and Parvati seated here. Again, one more beautiful representation of Shiva Parvati being seated. And this is Harihara Rupa, Shiva and Vishnu together. You have this Andakasura Samhara Murti. Again, a representation of Shiva as Andakasura Samhara. Shiva is pierced his Trishula on Andakasura, and the Andakasura is hanging there in this spear of Shiva, Trishula of Shiva. And look at that, this Triprasamhara Murti. Shiva is seen as Triprasamhara Murti on this beautiful chariot. Brahma is riding the chariot and he's seeing the Asuras. And look at the way in which they have expressed the beautiful features. Shiva is so angry, his eyes are bulging out. His aim is there on to shoot for the 3 Asuras. Look at the way the beautiful sculpture has been represented. And this is again a Nataraja Murti, Shiva Tandava Murti. Again, you have the Bhikshadana form of Shiva. All these sculptures are very similar of the Dravidian style of architecture. You have again the Shiva here. You have Ardhanari form of Shiva. And apart from Shiva, you have many representatives of Vishnu Murtis also. Narasimha slaying the demon Hiranyakashipu. Again, Mahavishnu seated on his Garuda Vahana. And you have the beautiful Mahavishnu. Shankam Chakram Padham Padmam Dharayantam Janardhanam. This is what we say. She's got Shanka, Chakra, Padma, and Gata. He's Janardhana, Mahavishnu. And this is Devi, Parvati in a tapas. Like this, wonderful sculptures are decorating the Prakara. Now, when we come to the main temple up to a 1-storied level is beautifully decorated as a base. The Garbhagriha is located slightly above the ground level, which is almost about 20 feet above the ground level. So the entire 20 feet height, the plinth is beautifully decorated, as if the entire temple is being held by elephants on its back. That's what you see in Kailasanath temple. You find the elephant's face alone, as if the elephant is lying down and the Kailasa temple is located on top of the back of the elephant. Here also, the elephant backs, the entire temple has been held up and the elephants are shown in full form. It is not only elephants, you have beautiful other creatures also there. You have lions, you have yalis, everything there, shown there. Look at the way the beautiful elephants are arranged all around the temple as if the entire temple is lifted by them on their back. Look at the way they have created. Up to that level, the first floor level, all these beautiful decorations are done for the Adhisthana. Such huge and tall Adhisthana you can never see in any of the temples. It's one of the greatest contributions that you can see in Ellora. In between the elephant sculptures, you will find the beautiful sculptural representations of Maithuna couples and so many other things. You find a lion there in between the elephants. And such artistically, they have created this. And above that, the entire wall is divided into different coastas, and lot of beautiful sculptural representations are included everywhere. Look at this. Narsimha slaying Hiranya. Hiranyakashipu is shown beautifully here. Again, he's pulling them. There he gave him one blow, now he takes him there. And then he goes to the Samara. The different postures of the Samara is being given very beautifully here. And when you see the base, as I said, it was beautifully carved Adhisthana, and above that you have the flat base of the entire temple coming up. And this temple is surrounded by 5 different temples, which is known as the Upalayas, which were again dedicated to different forms of Shiva. Today, no Murti is there inside to identify what Murti was there inside. But it's a beautiful 5 beautiful temples all around. That's what you see here, one of the beautiful temples of the Upalaya. You have the Upalaya on one other side, and the central Upalaya is also seen here. And all these Upalayas surround the main structure of the Kailasa. And this is the most famous Kailasa sculpture that you see here. This was a later addition. One portion right outside the main temple is seen here. Here, the live rock was scooped out as if it was Kailasa, where Shiva and Parvati were seated and Ravana was lifting the Kailasa mountain and shaking it. So that is beautifully represented in this sculpture. And because of this sculpture, this temple gets the name Kailasa. Now let's see very beautifully in close quarters of this sculpture. Shiva is seated there in Kailasa. Parvati is also seated by him. All the Ganas are playing. When Ravana lifts the Kailasa and shakes it up, Parvati loses her balance and she falls down. And she goes and hugs to Shiva. Look at her legs are stretched. She's gone to hug Shiva because she has lost her balance. How beautifully it has been represented. And look at that, Ravana with his 10 heads and 20 arms, lifting up the entire Kailasa and shaking it up. The 10 heads of Ravana are shown in a very circular form. It is not wide. It is just placed one after in a circular form very beautifully. And all the 20 arms are stretched out in different directions as if he has lifted the Kailasa and shaking it up. What beautiful representation of the sculpture. This should have been the masterpiece of all this architectural feature in this temple. Unfortunately, today it is totally damaged and you could, but even then, that small remaining portion, what you see, can throw you light as to how wonderful this creation should have been there in its heydays. And after coming out of the Kailasa sculpture, you have the beautiful sculpture of Ramayana. That side we saw Mahabharata, this side we have Ramayana. This Ramayana is done in a very beautiful way, following the sloka which is there in existence for time immemorial. It is said, Adau Rama Tapovanati Gamanam Ritwamraham Kanchanam Vaidehi Haranam Jatayu Maranam Sugriva Sambhashanam Vali Nigrahanam Samudraharanam Lankapuri Dahanam Paschat Ravana Kumbhakarnahanam Etatvi Ramayanam. This is a very beautiful sloka of the precise, concise version of Ramayana is there in the sloka. That is shown in here. Adhau Rama Tapovanati Gamanam. Rama and Sita are going to Tapa onto the Vanavasa. Here is Guha taking them, and all that story is shown here. Very, very beautifully here in this. We'll see that in close quarters. So now Sugriva Sambhashanam and Vali Nigrahanam. So Vali and Sugriva are fighting Nigrahanam. Then they go for the Samudra Dahanam. Samudra Madhanam. So Samudra is to be crossed. All the Vanaras are La Samudra is crossed by Anjaneya. So all the Vanaras are looking at it. Then when he goes there, he meets Sita and destroys the beautiful Ashokavana. And then he is taken before Ravana and he's seated on top of the seat which he made out of his own, what he called the tail. And that tail is lifted and he does the Lanka Dahanam. Then there comes here down to build the Setu bridge to reach to Lanka, and all the Vanaras are carrying the rocks in their head and going to build the Setu bridge. And that's beautifully represented here. And then Paschat Ravana Kumbhakarna Hanam Etatvi Ramayanam. So Ravana and Kumbhakarna are finished in this war, and that is the end of Ramayana. So beautifully it's been sculpted. And you have a beautiful sculpture of how Ravana was abducting Sita in his Pushpaka Vimana and Jatayu was fighting. Ravana comes down from his Pushpaka Vimana and fights with Jatayu. Jatayu is a bird which is shown here, and this is Ravana, and that's the Pushpaka Vimana which is flying through the air. And that's beautifully represented in the sculpture here. Now, when we come out, we first see the beautiful, before we enter up to this sanctum, we see the beautiful sculpture of the colossal Gajasamharamurti. One of the favorite forms of my Shiva, which I admire very much, is Gajasamharamurti. And thus it's represented so beautifully, 20 feet tall Gajasamharamurti, spreading out its arm and tearing the skin of the elephant, and he's just there. Look at the majestic way in which he's represented. The Sapta Matakas are seen here, and of course all their heads are gone. But still, this cult of Shiva being worshipped with Sapta Matakas continued even during the Rashtrakuta times. Look at that beautiful close-up of Gajasamharamurti's face. With a subtle smile and the Jatamakutam, the bulging eyes, he has just teared the skin of the elephant. And that's me in front of the great Gajasamharamurti. And our group of friends who visited this. Now, right opposite to this Gajasamharamurti is what you call Yogeshwara or Dakshinamurti, they call it today. It's yogic form of Shiva. That's beautifully, like very similar to that of Dakshinamurti image. And that's also a very, very beautiful colossal image that you can see here. The rishis, the 4 rishis here, and all the animals and you can see elephant, bull, lion, everything all there in total serene surrounding of Dakshinamurti there, seated there, and the 2 Ganas, Shiva Ganas are also there. And that's the Yoga Dakshinamurti who's seated under the tree. The beautiful banyan tree is Dakshinamurti. And this is a group of friends who were there at Ellora. And then now we are coming up to the main sanctum. In front of the sanctum, you have the beautiful Dwarapalas. Fantastic Dwarapalas are there. And these were all painted those days. And today you can see the remains of that color that was once painted also there. Huge colossal figures. When you see these 2 Dwarapalaka figures, you immediately connect yourself to that image of the Dwarapalas you saw at the Pattadakal temple. It's very, very similar to them in the style, representation, the jewelry, and every other aspect of it. Almost carved out as a total relief sculpture. very similar to that of what we saw in Pattadakal. And these are the beautiful Dwarapalas you see there. And and they are in an enclosed mandapam. That enclosed mandapam roof, you have a beautiful representation of the Purushamrakam, which you call the Sphinx in Egypt. So this Purushamrakam has been represented as if they are holding the entire mandapam. Can we see this Purushamrakam on all the four corners of this? Now we are entering to the main temple, and this is the Mahamantapam of the temple with huge pillars. The look of this Mahamantapam is very, very similar to that of the Virupaksha temple in Pattadakal. You can see the beautiful pillars are being decorated very similar to that of what we saw in the Virupaksha temple. All the designs, the floral motifs, everything is very similar to that of what we see in Pattadakal. And this is very clear evidence the artist from Pattadakal, where the people who created this particular beautiful temple of Kailasa is one standing example which proves beyond doubt that these people were brought in to create this Kailasa. Look at the designs. Very, very similar to that of what we see in Pattadakal. All the Kumbha, the Purna Kumbha, Torana designs, everything very similar. And you have paintings also seen there on the roof. This is one of the Nataraja paintings that you see on that pillar. You have a lot of sculptural representations, and most of them are defaced. One is here, you see Shiva and Parvati seated on the bull. And this is something amazing. This is right on top of the roof. When you do a structural temple, this sculpture may be carved out down below and taken and placed upside down on the rooftop. But this being a monolithic temple, this sculpture was carved right on top of the roof. A person must have been lying down and carving out with all the chips of the stones falling on his eyes. What a painful job it was, and how beautifully this person, the sculptor, has created it. Shiva doing Nartana and Parvati watching it and Gana playing it. This is right on top of the roof. Amazing feature. It's extraordinarily beautiful. And then we come to the sanctum where the huge Shivalinga, again, a piece which is totally carved out and scooped out of the live rock. The Shivalinga inside the beautiful sanctum is there. Once, which was under worship, today it's a monument. Of course, with due respects, people leave their shoes and chappals outside when they come inside to this main hall of the temple as a mark of respect, though it's not still under worship, but that's been done with respect. And look at the Ganesha image and so many beautiful images surrounding the outer prakara of the main. You have the Maithuna couples, you have the beautiful prakara temples. Look at that beautiful prakara temples, very, very similar to that of the Kailasa temple, Kailasa temple in Kanchi. The Pallava architectural style is very evidently seen here with Sala and Panjara arrangements. Look at that beautiful forms of Shiva. Shiva is seen here as Rishivantaka. Look at the beautiful Makara Torana. The Makara, so huge Makara tail. Shiva, again, a Samhara Murti. And we come out to the Nandi Mantapam. Out of the main hall, we enter the Nandi Mantapam through a passage. And this Nandi Mantapam is so beautifully decorated. This must have been a later addition, but then it's beautifully decorated with wonderful sculptures on the roof and on different areas of this. Look at the way in which the roof is being created. And the pillars are all scooped out of the single rock. Now we complete the darshan of the sanctum and we come down. As we come down, the first thing we come across is the Saptamatrika shrines, where the 7 divine mothers are there. The beautiful sculptural representations of the 7 divine mothers are seen here. This is, of course, a later edition during the Govinda III time, but Saptamatrika worship was very common along with Shiva worship, and that was shown here very cleanly here in this beautiful temple of Kailasa, where you have the different sculptures, huge sculptures of Saptamatrika. This is Chamunda. Look at the way the Chamunda is represented in such a fiery form. And two Vijayastambhas, the Prakara and the Vijayastambha on this side. Look at the beautiful Kailasa, how beautiful edifice it is. The two Vijayastambhas on either side. Kailasa is shining beautiful. Kailasa is one of the greatest marvels in Indian architecture. It is unimaginable how these unnamed sculptors and sthapatis were able to create this great edifice. It's very unfortunate that this has not been recognized as a wonder of this world. My salutations to the great master creators of this great architectural wonder.